Welcome to In All Honesty, the podcast where we get real about life and all the problems that come with it. I'm Michelle Elman, and I'm that friend who we all know is a little bit too honest. You might not come to me when you get back together with your ex, but I'll be there for you when it all goes tits up. Hi, and welcome back to In All Honesty, and today's co-host is Lucy Ellis, who is my ex-publicist, current friend, and the person who is hosting Lucy's Book Club, which I am doing an event with on what date?
The 27th.
27th. I will be there. I just don't have it in my head right now. Can you introduce yourself?
So I'm Lucy. I have a book club and I'm Michelle's friend, which I'm honoured that you say that. And then before that, I was your publicist back in the day, like 3-4 years ago.
You were my first publicist, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And today I wanted to talk about whether you can actually be friends with colleagues. And it's a conversation that I write about in Bad Friend, but also was a chapter that caused me so many issues because, being really honest, that chapter is actually about an agent. But because I didn't want anyone to be identifiable, I changed it to publicist. And so as a result, I had ex-publicists reaching out being like, is this chapter about me? I do like to stay in touch with people I've worked with.
Yes.
And I try to end it even if we can't stay in touch on the best of terms. But have you found, like, when you've left companies or whatever, that you can actually stay friends with people?
I find it really difficult, actually. Like, when you said you wanted to talk about this, I was thinking about, like, all the friends I have in London, and they're either from work or from, like, fitness.
Yeah.
And it's always, like, the ones I met through, like, running or fitness that have stayed in my life. And, like, the work friends, I'm close to some. But I think it's because you're in that, like, proximity with them all the time, Monday to Friday, that you get really close, share, like, your every detail of your life with them. Well, that was me anyway, probably shouldn't do. And then you leave and then you're like, well, what do we talk about now?
Well, I think there are a few things there. One, when you are working together, you don't realise, like, when someone's bad at communicating, for example. Like, we'd be texting every day around work, but we'd also be like, how are you, by the way, blah, blah. Do you get what I mean? So then you don't actually discover until you stop working together, like, oh, that person takes 3 days to reply to a text as a friend, but was replying to you as a colleague more. And then, like, some of the calls I used to have with my manager, like, it would be a 20-minute call about the work stuff, but it would be an hour call because it would be a 40-minute catch-up about us. And it's just, it's automatic and it's already built in. And then once you aren't working together, there's no actual reason to see each other. So then the effort is needed to be, like, increased. And I think sometimes we really struggle with that transition from one to another. But also then there's the reality of, like, a lot of people while you're working with them will call you a friend, but actually, like, never really had the intention of being friends.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like, in my last job, I actually really struggled making friends there. And I'd see people, like, going out for, like, work dinner, like, not work dinners after work, or, like, obviously worked in fitness, like, people would do spin classes all the time together. And I was kind of, like, always, like, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I've got one girl that I'm really close with still that I see all the time, Vicky. And I think that's because we have so much in common. And she wasn't, like, directly working with me. She was, like, a connection within the business. But, yeah, like, since leaving most of my jobs, I'd say, like, the friendships have been really hard. But then I've got people that, like, I've got an ex-colleague's wedding.
Was your choice, though, when you were in that company? Or did you feel like when you went into the company that people were automatically, like, quite distanced?
I think it felt like there was already a group and it was quite hard to step into. And I think maybe it was an age thing as well. Like, they were slightly older. They all lived, like, outside of London as well. And I think they all had, like, a different kind of lifestyle to me. But
I always really struggle because I've never worked in an office.
Yeah.
Or at least, like, I did a lot of work in offices up till probably the age of 21, but never as an adult. I always struggled to, like, break it. It really felt like school. And especially when you're starting in a new place, or, like, a lot of the work experience I had, I would only be there for, like, 2 weeks. At lunch, I would purposely go out because I wouldn't want to, like, be sat in the cafeteria by myself or have to ask. And then usually on the, like, last day you were there, someone would be like, why didn't you come out for lunch with us? And I was like, okay, but why didn't you ask that on the first day, not the last day? And, like, the last day would just be like, bye now. It was something that really touched, like, all wounds around, like, childhood stuff of, like, being sat alone at lunch or feeling like you're not being welcomed in.
Yeah, I know that feeling, but I think everywhere I've worked has had like really young members of staff, but it is weird because lunchtime I'd always like make an effort to be with people, but I think it's just like it is an effort thing, isn't it? Because if you're seeing people like guaranteed, it's like kind of like housemates, like you know you're going to see them in the house, or so it's harder to maybe make the effort outside of work. And then I've left and I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to see anyone.
Yeah.
And it's the same with like old agencies I used to work at. Like I worked at an all women's one like just before my last job, and it was quite a big agency and I really clicked with everyone. I think I'm quite good at making friends with people, but it's like then you leave and they carry on as normal, and then you watch someone new come in that then is like the new friend, and then you watch them do all the same things, and I'm like,
is there a feeling of like FOMO?
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
But I think it is effort though. It's just harder to make the effort, and I'm someone that probably isn't very good at making that effort.
So when you say you're good at making friends, but you're not good at making the effort, so you're good at initiating the contact, but not actually following up or maintaining.
Probably, yeah.
I'm literally the opposite.
Really?
So once I'm in a conversation, I'm good. Yeah. But initiating, which is why like my go-to approach at lunchtimes was like, I'm just not going to even put myself in the area to get rejected.
Yeah.
I'm going out for lunch. I'm going to be, and then the perception of me is like she doesn't want to socialize.
Yeah.
When actually it's because I'm too scared to then like walk into the cafeteria, no, I don't have anywhere to sit, and then have to walk out.
Yeah.
So then I'd rather just like, oh, I'm going out for lunch, like I'm all good, like don't worry about me. But then realistically, I was never long term at a place where I needed to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And I think then when we talk about like lack of community, if you are working in a place where you don't have that colleague support, I mean, like I sort of get that more because I don't have colleagues really. Sometimes you just need a person to call to be like, how do I send this email? Yeah. Like, how do I phrase this? Or how do I manage this? Or is this the right way to go about it? And having someone to like brainstorm off of. I actually think, especially considering how many hours in the day we work, it's such a vital part of your happiness and your health in your workplace.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what my problem is I overshare so much. So I'll go into the office and like, I remember I'd go in and like no one would ever look up, and I'd be like, morning everyone, how's everyone's weekends? And you're just greeted with like and I'd be like, okay, cool. And then I think I think
that's a good energy though.
Yeah, good energy from me. But then you're like, well, why is no one reciprocating? So then I think I start oversharing because I'm like trying to fill this like silent void. And then I'm like, my colleagues don't need to know this about me. And I think that's always been my problem. I give too much. And then with like friends and colleagues especially, and then I think they're my friends, and then actually I have to remind myself like we're actually not friends, we are here.
Has that ever been an issue with like bosses?
Yeah.
What, that they've not liked it?
Yeah. Not liked it, but I think then it works in my to my disadvantage in a manner, because they probably know too much about my personal life, that then if there's an issue at work, like that's kind of used.
That's what I've always not liked, is the fact that it happens in relationships as well. Like if you're saying like, oh, this friend's really annoying me, blah, 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 and then you're talking to your partner about an issue you have, and they're like, oh, you're just annoyed about your friend. And I'm like, no, I am capable of separating things. I am actually just angry at you. And I have another thing that I'm annoyed about separately that has nothing to do with this conversation. But I think also one of the things that's hard with this colleague-friend thing is there are people who never had the intention of being friends, and the word is just so loose. And one of the things I talk about is like the word friend doesn't really have much of a definition. Yeah, because this is the thing. The number of times you use the word friend about someone you haven't seen, and like, oh, I went to school with her. Oh, a friend, like that was a friend I went to school with. And it's like, actually, you were never friends in school. And so as a result, there are feelings hurt when that distance is created. Yeah. And it's like, oh, it was just a work connection. It wasn't anything to do with, and as much as they know a lot about your personal life, it doesn't feel like a personal relationship. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's something this year in particular I've been working on, is like who actually are my friends. And I've realised like my close friend circle is really quite small. And I look back at old birthdays, and I remember an ex saying to me once like, oh, whenever you have a birthday, like there's always different people there to last year. Like you've got so many friends on, and like I am really lucky that I've got amazing people everywhere around me, but actually like my friends. So you have a tiering system. I have the same of like friends, good friends, and best friends.
Yeah.
And like the best friends very rarely change.
Yeah.
But all the friends and the good friends change a lot.
Yeah. And I've noticed, like, I think birthdays are quite a good sort of thing to look at to indicate who like the work friends are, because I look back at like last year's birthday, it was very much like friends from a previous job that I'd recently left. The birthday before that were a lot of girls that I'd worked with in an agency. The one before that was the same. And I'm always like, oh, they're always like work friends that are at my things. And now I'm like, it's my birthday soon, and I'm thinking about like who I'd want to invite along. And it's not really a lot of my old work friends.
Around birthday stuff, for example, do you find that there's a jump around making that first invite after you stop becoming colleagues? Of like, it's a vulnerable thing to be like, oh no, I actually did want to be your friend.
Yeah.
And trying to then put that effort in to actually transition it into a friendship is, I think, where a lot of the relationships get lost. One of the stories I talk about in the book is like, I got her around an agent relationship where we were very close, and like our catch-ups would be like hours long, and it would be weekly, and then it was like 2 or 3 times of trying to arrange dinner, and then we never arranged dinner. And I was just like, after a few times you just stop trying.
Yeah, I've had that.
And then you bump into them like one day, and like I bumped into them one day, and then it was just like, oh yeah, why did we? And then I was like, because you didn't reply. Like, and I remember I said it, and they were like, no, I did. I was like, pull up your phone. You didn't reply. I asked you for dinner like 3 times. We eventually caught up over the phone, but we've actually never gone for dinner since.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's also how I hang out with my friends a lot, going for lunch, going for dinner.
Yeah,
like,
that's how I like connecting with people.
Because I think it's intimate and deep, and like you can actually have a proper conversation. And if you're not capable of doing that, I think that's where sometimes, if let's say a person's way of hanging out with their friends is like festivals, parties, whatever, then like your friendship could genuinely be incompatible just because of the way you spend your time.
Yeah, that's what I found, because I was sober for like 3 years. Don't really have a reason why. I just ended up being sober for 3 years, and I just didn't want to drink. I did the same thing. Like accidentally sober. That's when I noticed a lot of my friendships changed, because I was like, well, I don't want to go out and do that. Maybe we aren't compatible, and they didn't want to do the things I want to do. And I think that's where I've noticed a big shift, like in my 20s, is actually, are we actually friends, or was it just because we were forced together 5 days a week?
Having moved around in so many jobs, have you found any solutions around it?
I think it is a trust thing. I think, who would I trust with this like problem, or who would I want to tell this like good news to? Like, who would celebrate me and stuff like that? And I think there are there's a few from different jobs that I'm really close with. Like my very first job in London, like 5-6 years ago, one of the girls is getting married, and I'm going to her wedding next month, which is really nice. But I'm finding it hard to find time to catch up with her before that, because it's like I'm not working at the minute like a conventional job. And even when I was, like, she's in the office on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, but the next 2-3 Tuesdays and Wednesdays I'm busy, and I would suggest maybe a Monday or a Thursday, but she's not in town, and it would like doesn't make sense for her to be there. So then I find that hard, because like a lot of people commute into London in places I work.
Having gone from like working in like 9 to 5 office jobs to then now you're going off on your own doing Lucy's book club and launching on your own, have you found everyone in your friendship group or the people in your life have been supportive?
Yeah, literally every single person.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Like every single I can't think of a single person that was like, oh, what are you doing?
See, I was asking that question because I know so many times friends often are more cautious than, like, it's a big jump, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes with the best of intentions, people are like, are you sure? But actually it's their own fears, it's their own worries. Exactly. And sometimes it's not friends, sometimes it's family being like, just wait a few months out. Like, you don't need to do this right now.
Yeah.
And actually that can be, if you're not secure in what you want and your dreams, that can really influence your decisions.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's helped is they saw how unhappy I've been for about 2 years in, like, not necessarily a particular job, but in myself, because I know it's not what I want to be doing. Like when you've got all these like passions and dreams and you've figured out your thing, I think my friends see that and they're like, no, chase it, because they know what I'm like. I'm going to do it, whether they tell me not like to or not.
What was the thing that like made you like be like, no, this is it. This is the decision I want to make?
I think it was just a conversation I had at work made me think, this just isn't for me.
Yeah.
And I think I just lost the passion, and I was just thinking so much about my own stuff, and I was like, oh, it's actually not fair for me to keep doing this, and like not on other people's time, obviously. It was always outside of work, but if my passion isn't here, I don't think it's fair for me to stay. And then just like conversations with my friends where everyone would be like, why don't you just go in for it? And I'd be like, right, so many people have told me to do it now. I just thought now's the right time. It's like a feeling that you just have to follow.
Even before you left your job, what was the thing that made you start Lucy's Book Club? Because there are many people listening who would have similar dreams to you and are like thinking about it and still not taking action. Like practically, I think when I think about businesses or ventures like yours, I'm like, practically, how does it actually start? Like, was it a WhatsApp group? Was it like asking 3 friends to a coffee shop?
Pretty much both. Like, I was on holiday with my ex reading a book, and I was like, oh, this book's really good. I want to talk about it with someone, but obviously not him.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, a book club. I've always mentioned a book club because I've always loved reading. And then it was kind of like I was thinking about what I get up to outside of work, and like work at the time wasn't really satisfying me. And I was thinking like, I've got all these hobbies like fitness, running, all my friends are kind of in that space, which is lovely.
Yeah.
But I was like, there's so much more to me than that. And I love reading. And I was like, I want to meet other people that like it. So then one day when I got back from this holiday, I was like, I'd love to start a book club. I think I put it on like Threads or my story or something. And I was like, I'll like this poll if you'd want to come.
Yeah.
Because I'd been Googling and looking for a book club, and I was like, they're just not the books I'd want to read.
Yeah.
So I thought, right, I'm going to start my own one, put up a story, and then like 10 people liked it at first. And I was like, okay, right, we're going to meet on this day.
And your first book club had 10 people?
It had 17. So I put up a thing saying, send me your number and I'll make a WhatsApp group. So there was like, I remember writing down all the numbers on a spreadsheet and then adding them in, because I didn't know how to like add people into a group other than that. So I made this huge list of phone numbers. There was like 80 people at this point that replied saying they wanted to be in it. And then I put in the group chat, like on this day, it was in September. I can't remember. I think it was the 12th or something like that. I said, I'm going to be at the Tate Modern Cafe. This is the book I'm reading.
Wait, so it's been less than a year?
A year in September.
A year?
Yeah, a year and a half. And yeah, I just said like, I'm going to be here on this day at this time. This is the book. And I wrote out some questions, and I just went and I dragged my housemate, and I was like, let's hope people come. And then there was like 15 people. About 10 of them were my friends that I'd kind of said like, please come to this. And then there's this guy there that I had no idea how he found it, but he's been to every single one since. And then I think because I posted about it, people were like, oh, wow, this is such a nice idea. Like, I'll come to the next one. Let me know when it is. But so many people said that I was like, right, I'll keep posting in this WhatsApp group. And then on the 4th one, so this was January, 95 people came. And I was looking around like, oh, my God.
Created something.
Yeah, and I thought, right, I've got to keep doing this then if this is like how quickly it's growing. And I think I made the Instagram page in November just so I could like post book reviews and stuff. And I never really, like the email is like Lucy's Book Club 123 or something. Like I never thought it'd be an official thing. So I need to like work on that professional side of it. But yeah, that's how it started.
I think it's a proof of the story of like, you don't wait until you're ready.
You just
go.
Do it.
I remember when I trained as a life coach, we had a class of about 20 people, and I launched my website first. I had my first client, all of that out of the whole class. And I think I did it because I was very underestimated. I was the youngest person. I was 21 years old. Most people in the class were like 50s who were doing it as their second career. I remember I went for lunch with one of them 4 months in, and by that time he had not even launched his website, and he was like, it's just not ready. Like, I don't know what I want to do. By that point, I changed my website completely redone my website 4 different times.
Wow.
Because the moment you start working, you can then figure things out and actually like...
Exactly.
But he was so in the like, I'm not ready, that like, he just kept focusing on the website. And I was like, but I've already changed, like, I made a decision on my website. It wasn't the right decision. I changed it again. I changed. My first website had like one of those like rocks on top of each other, like meditation vibe. And then I was like, I don't want to do this. And then I decided I want to be a body confidence coach. So I wanted to specify on body confidence. And like, I changed it so many times, but only because I learned practically from what I was already doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of the things you were talking about, like reverse engineering what you are interested in, is probably the way to start. So if I remember our days back in, what year would it have been? It would have been, it was The Joy of Being Selfish, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at first you were Scarred Not Scared on Instagram when I first worked with you,
So I started working with Lucy on The Joy of Being Selfish. I think it was the paperback, so that would have been 2021.
Just after COVID that I started.
And back then you said to me, my favourite clients are people who write books.
Yeah.
And so if you are in a job where you're not satisfied, pay attention to the things that light you up. Because when I wasn't happy as a life coach, the thing that I paid attention to was I really liked writing my blog for my website.
Yeah.
And like, it was a silly, I didn't need a blog on my website, but I just wanted one. And I liked writing the captions on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so I paid attention to that. And that's how I ended up writing books. But I think a lot of the time we look at it too big picture when actually like all the dots join up. Even though you were doing PR, it was like your passion was in there. And I think that's where like when you then moved different jobs and like that part of it was gone, you found it in your side hustle.
That now that's so interesting. Actually, I'd not thought of it that way. I know it's really cliche and it's like start the thing, but you just have to start.
But I think it still would have brought you joy even if it had stayed as just 10 people
and
10 people every month. And I think that's what like drives you, is like when you are loving what you're doing. And I think when I look back to, people ask me all the time, like, would you go back to having individual clients? And I was like, ultimately, the part I never really quite realized is like, I really like talking. And I'm never going to be able to talk as much as I want. So I get to be a life coach, but I get to also do what I like. And I think that's where like we live in a day and age where you can customize your job a lot more. And even if that's going to your boss and saying, hey, can I have a little bit more of public speaking, or can I have a little bit more client facing role? That's the thing that lights me up. Like, your boss wants you to be satisfied in the job role too. It benefits them. And people tend to be more productive and efficient when they're doing something they enjoy. And so I think that's where, if you can't change your job, you can shift small parts of it to make sure you are doing more of what you like and less of what you don't.
When I did that, my first ever interview for book club was with Ali Abdaal, and one of the things he said to me was, and he talks about it in his book, is like, try and make every day fun. Because I was trying to relate it to people who were at work, and I was like, how can someone apply that if they're in a really boring office job? And he was like, well, I just put on this playlist that brings me so much joy, so that when I'm doing a really mundane task, like, at least I've got that. And I would always remember that, like, if there's something I didn't like, I'd be like, right, try and make a bit of this.
Have you ever done it with like the microwave? I do it with the microwave. No. So if I'm like, I was heating up food this morning, but I need the dishwasher empty, so I pretend like it's a race against myself, so I turn it into a game. But it means it's the only way I get it done. It's like, I ordered food 2 days ago. I've been doing like 5 annotated copies of like Bad Friend, and it's been like the bane of my life. It's taken like 3 weeks. And so I ordered food and was like, I need to get to the end of the book by the time the food arrives.
I'm like that.
And like, I was on the last sentence as like, I was like highlighting the last sentence, and I was like, oh my God, I did it. But like, I do that all the time, turn everything into a game.
Yeah. And that's how I got through like my last few jobs, is like trying to find little bits of fun in it.
When you were at jobs that weren't making you happy, was there a lot of just like hanging on, or like, because you probably stayed 6 months where you weren't happy.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who's in that position of just like waking up and just trying to get through the day, and like how draining that is?
I think if you've got something you know you're working towards, like, let that be your end goal. Like, I was never really unhappy in the job. I was more unhappy in myself because I wasn't like chasing my purpose. And I think I've always done jobs where I'm like building up other people's dreams, which is really satisfying. But it gets to a point where you're like, actually, like, I've got this idea in my head that if I don't follow it now, like, what if someone else comes to do it?
You know, there's a cliche quote about that, which is like, if you don't build your own dreams, you'll help build someone else's.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, right, now's my time to just do it. And I think obviously, like, you have to be sensible. I live in central London. Like, not everyone can just quit their job that they're not happy in.
There's a lot of messaging on social media of just
this is what I hate,
and it's not realistic. And that's why I want to talk about this part where like you did have to just like grin and bear it for like 6 months, where you knew the end goal, but at the same time it's irresponsible to keep, and a lot of the people on TikTok saying it are saying it from a very privileged standpoint. And actually I think, especially someone like myself who's largely working in creative industries, the honest truth that no one will tell you is that 90% of people who work in creative industries are coming from huge financial privilege and a massive safety net, which is largely their parents to fall back on.
Exactly.
Because that's the only way, because like, especially with like creative industries, the payment terms are usually like 90 days.
Yeah.
So it's not even like if you're making enough money, you can survive. You can be making enough money. And I have friends who are influencers who are like, I am owed over £20,000 right now. Mental. And it's just not in my account.
Yeah.
Like I am struggling to pay rent because companies are not paying me on time.
It's so bad. It's so bad. And like, that's a big fear of mine. But I managed to somehow save up enough to just get me through the next few months. And I think I have so many friends, and they're fucking amazing, who are creators. And they were like, just quit, just do this. And I was like, I've got £1,000 a month pay and rent. Like, I can't be like, Mum. Like, they can't afford that. But I think that was a tricky thing. It's not that I was like grin and bearing it for 6 months, because I did put my absolute all in where I could. But I knew deep down, like, I really just want to follow my own dreams. But I think that's a lot of businesses are really supportive of that, actually. And like my old colleagues have been like really big cheerleaders of mine, which was really nice. And they were always like, go and just do this thing. Like, you clearly love it. It's clearly going well. And like, I do want to get another job at some point, because I really enjoy working. It's not realistic to everyone to just quit their job. And I hate that narrative of like, just quit and like, it will work out, because I actually, realistically.
Well, I think a lot of the conversation is around like fear, like don't let your fear dictate it, but some of your fear is legitimate, because like the reason why you're worrying about paying your bills is because you literally have no income suddenly. In terms of the more like mental blocks of like not believing you're worth it, or not believing you deserve it, or when your book club growing overnight, how do you keep yourself grounded and not get overwhelmed by it all?
I'm still figuring that out, because I find it really overwhelming, like to the point where I struggle to like reply to DMs, because I like get so overwhelmed. I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, all these people are coming together to make a new friend or like connect with someone, and like it means a lot to people there. So then that kind of gets me through when I am feeling overwhelmed.
Have you found that with the book club, a lot of people do make friends at these events? So one of the things that I push in the book is like trying to find something where the meeting up is automatic for you. That friction in friendship actually can lead to you not making friends, whereas like having people you see monthly at the book club. When do a lot of people come alone, and do a lot of people arrive quite nervous around that?
Yeah, I get a lot of messages before, like, I'm coming on my own, is that okay? Or like, one of the most frequently asked questions is it okay to come alone? And I always say, like, I actually encourage it, because I'm the type of person that I would rather go to something on my own. Yeah. Because I love my friends, but if there's probably a certain friend I'd take to something, and I'd probably be a little bit on edge of how I'd act in front of someone new with them alongside me. But on my own, I'm just like completely me. And you don't have to worry about someone else. But then a lot of people actually bring their friends, and it changes each month. Like, if people don't, like, not everyone comes to book club every single month, because they might not be interested in like the topic of the book or whatever. But yeah, loads of people come on their own.
I think there's also something about getting out of your comfort zone a little bit more. And when you go to, I think there is a power. I mean, I threw 3 book events last week, and there was something about book events where like, I think because it's such an introverted hobby, that it attracts people who find it very hard to make friends, but also are very open and wanting to make friends, but very rarely put in that position where they can. Yeah. And I think when you go alone, you are getting out of your comfort zone more, but also if I go with someone, I am the kind of person who will stay with that person all night and only talk to them and not talk to anyone new.
So I'd rather go on my own, so I actually branch out. Yeah. And what I do is, and I've noticed the book girlies and the guys, we get a mix. They love details, like the bookish world love a little detail. So like the name badges that we do really help. So as you walk in, someone, it's normally Callum at the minute, or Cammy, my housemate, whoever I managed to rope in first, they're there with a pen and they'll like write whoever they're talking to's name down. So as you come in, like that's a bit less daunting, because you already know everyone's name. And it seems silly at first and people always laugh, but I'm like, no, it makes such a big difference.
So one of the things I'm trying to unpick is like the fact that people ask me, how do you make friends all the time? But actually it's such a long process. So if you separate it into bits and pieces, it's like meeting people versus following up versus maintaining friendships versus initiating conversations versus like actually telling your friends that you're looking for more friends and actually overcoming that shame around like the loneliness. Having a name badge is something really simple that would take a lot of pressure off, but also like something that like all my friends is like, I don't use names as a result.
Yeah.
So because I'm so worried about getting it wrong, and because I'm so bad with faces, I never say nice to meet you. Like, so when I leave places, I'm like, this was great, wonderful, like lovely to see you. I will never say nice to meet you because the chances are I've already met you before and I can't remember.
Have that all the time. I'll be like, oh, nice to meet you. And they're like, met you before. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
But I think these are like practical things that are helpful to people, because we don't talk about how people find that difficult. We joke about it. But like actually learning to never say nice to meet you never puts me in that position now.
Yeah, that's such a good
it's such a simple, practical thing. But also same with names. I don't use names because it breaks rapport more to say someone's name wrong than to just not say their name.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, even though there are all these like communication books that say using someone's name strengthens the bond, blah, blah, blah. I think How to Win Friends and Influence People says it, that you should use someone's name and use it often. It's still better to not use someone's name than to break rapport and say their name wrong. Yeah, and so that's where like I've had to figure out like solutions around it, but it's always been a little bit of resentment in me that it's always spoken about like it's common sense. Yeah. Because I was like, we always get expected to know how to socialize without actually ever being taught how to socialize. And some people find it a little bit more difficult than other people. Like for me, one of my, like those are all my weaknesses, but one of my natural skills is how to hold a conversation.
Yeah, same.
And if I'm trying to teach that to someone, I think I would struggle to teach it because I've never had to learn it. Like it's just easy.
Yeah, I think you either have it or you don't you?
But then I could teach someone how to initiate a conversation because I really struggle with that.
Yeah.
I told a friend that recently and he was like, what? Like you, like I would never think that. You're so sociable, you're so chatty, you're so bubbly. And I was like, right, okay, think about the last time I sent you a text first or the last time I called first. And he was like, I've actually never thought about that. And I was like, right, because to you, initiation isn't important. To you, effort is important, which is likely why we're friends. Yeah. Because the ones who drop out of my life are people who get very sensitive around who initiates more. Yeah. And I remember I had a fallout with a friend where he initiated, where we were on the phone for like 4 hours while he was driving home. In my mind, like that's me giving you my full attention and you were driving and I was occupying you and I was being your entertainment. Yeah. I'm cool with that. But then 2 days later, he called and was like upset that he was like, you never call me. And I was like, but that's so funny because if I wanted to like nitpick, you weren't even giving me your full attention. You were in a car bored and driving home and it was a 4-hour journey. And I was sat on my sofa giving you my full attention. But you've fixated on who initiated rather than realizing that if I didn't want to pick up the phone, one, I wouldn't have, and two, if I didn't want to have that conversation, I wouldn't have stayed on it for 4 hours. But if you focus in on the way that you want people to show you love, you are missing out on how they show love. And I think we talk a lot about that in romantic relationships, but never in friendship.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm quite lucky because my closest circle of friends, we all like communicate in a really similar way. Like if I think about the girls that I talk to or text the most, like I'd never think, oh, I text them like last, so I'm not going to text them first. Like we just know we're comfortable enough to like bounce off each other all the time. But I have had friendships when I was younger that was like, oh, I always ask you for plans, you never ask me. But it's like,
you always invite me,
that kind of thing.
You like,
no, that's interesting.
I think there's a lot of tit for tat and a lot of counting around it, and I think once you've got to that point in friendship, it usually means the friendship is already strained.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think I use an analogy of like your friendship being a bank account, and I don't mean it in a transactional way because the reality is when you have enough money in your bank account, you're not checking it. Yeah. Whereas it's only when the money's running low, you're checking it all the time of like, how much have you done? How much have I done? Yeah. It's so interesting. There are so many conversations around friendship that I am so excited to explore in our event and get chatting. I love booky people. And I think even just working in the publishing industry, like there's a joke that anyone who's in the publishing industry is there because they love it because it's not for the money.
Yeah, exactly. Even the book club world, I'm like, right, I'm not in this for the money. I just love books and like the conversations around it and like hosting things with people like you that actually have something to teach people. And like, I've gone to a lot of events with like authors and you kind of leave and you're like, just talked about the book. Whereas like the ones I like doing are with people like you, where it's like, actually, so many people I know struggle with friendships, me included. And that's since like being friends with you really and learning about boundaries and learning about friendship on a deeper level, have I like really started reflecting on what I'm like as a friend or what I need to do more of, and like checking in with the right people and maybe letting go of some people. And I think so many people come to that event and think, actually, this is so helpful.
Since reading the book, have you changed how you do friendship at all?
I'd say this year I've changed how I do friendship. And I was talking to one of my mates the other day who is going through something I was going through last year, where he was like very much known for like what he does rather than who he is. And that's something I struggled with last year. And I was like, there's too many people in my life.
Yeah.
All lovely, amazing people, but they're people that would phone me because they need something from me, or they need a favour, or they need, oh, can you introduce me to that person? And I've realised, like, after about 2 years of that, that's actually not friendship.
No.
And I think
tit for tat again.
And now I'm really, really intentional with my friends. And it's something I've become more aware of now. I'm in a new relationship as well. Like, I'm making sure I put effort in with the people that I really, really care about.
I love that.
Yeah.
Also, because the stats show that if you get into a romantic relationship, you lose 2 of your closest friends. So when I got into a relationship, I was the same way of like, you have to be very intentional about like, I'm not going to be the friend that disappears when I get into a relationship. One of my pet peeves at the moment is people cancelling.
Same.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
We end every episode with something we are working on. So it can be personal development or anything that you might not have all the answers around it, even like just something you're trying to figure out. What is going on in your life that you are working on?
Oh my God, everything. I'm just trying to work out how I can make this like book club world something that supports my lifestyle and I can actually put all my time and energy into it. So if anyone has any tips, let me know.
That's what you're working on. The thing I'm working on at the moment is speaking of cancelling, I am not a person who does not cancel, and I've cancelled a number of things this week because I just realised when you get to the point where you know you're not contributing to a room, I'm like, why am I even going?
That's so
and I am at the level of tiredness where I think I always, after an event, schedule in about 3 days to be a little bit calmer because there is an adrenaline crash that happens. I'm cool with Q&As, but if I do anything that's like keynote or like anything that requires a lot of preparation, there's always an adrenaline crash and a cortisol crash that comes after. And I think because I had so many back-to-back things, I've kind of like extended the crash. So I need to crash. I need to just let myself slow down. And I am having no guilt around the cancelling because I think when you're a reliable person, the rare time you do cancel, you're forgiven a lot easier because people know that you are only cancelling because it really is a last resort. And so if you're going to do it, you might as well not feel any guilt about it, because then I might as well go and then not feel guilty. So that is what I'm currently working on at the moment, and I'll keep you updated on how that's going.
If you cancelled on this today, I'd know you really needed to.
Yeah, but I also wasn't going to because I was really excited to speak to you about it, and I'm also not going to cancel on Lucy's Book Club on the 27th. 27th, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next Tuesday for a brand new episode.